Hello, Stephen. Glad you could pull yourself away from the Amber Heard testimony long enough to chat to me.
Hello, Gavin. Good to see you again.
Have you been watching Amber Heard and Johnny Depp?
I have a little bit. It's a bit ridiculous, isn't it? It's one big drama, and everything's been put into sound bites to make one of the others look bad.
Yeah. Well, she's not holding up very well under cross-examination, it's fair to say.
She isn't. She isn't. She's starting to sweat.
And how about you? Are you sweating during these tricky market times?
Yeah, I mean it's pretty difficult at the moment in the market, but I think the more investing experience you have, then the more resilient you get, and the more used to these ups and downs you have in the market. So yeah, just trying to keep calm and keep doing the same things that I was doing before, and yeah, hopefully things turn around soon.
Well, I just see people starting to make videos today because of very recent greenness in the market. Is it a dead
Yeah,
cat bounce?
yeah, I think I think anything really can happen in the very short term, especially with all of these things that are happening in the market at the moment. There's so many things happening, from inflation to interest rates to the war in Russia. And I think there's a lot of things that could play out in the short term. Um, I think it's just about having a strategy, keeping to it, and staying calm during these times, because there's a lot of fear in the market, and people think that the world's ending, and the sun always comes up tomorrow.
Yeah, most of the time the world doesn't end, as Peter Lynch
It
says.
it doesn't, and I think by chasing all the chasing whatever's hot at the moment, you end up buying in at incredibly high prices, and when the rest of the market recovers, you're left holding the bag. So it's best just to continue to invest in what you know best, and yeah, don't adapt your strategy too much.
Can you propose an alternative expression to dead cat bounce? Can you explain dead cat bounce, first of all?
I can explain a dead cat bounce. Yeah, a dead cat bounce is when the market goes down a lot, and then you have a slight revival of the market again, and everyone thinks, oh yes, it's turned around, before it goes a step lower. So that's a dead cat bounce.
What? But why a dead cat bounce? What's the idea?
I don't know the history behind it. I'll be honest. I don't know
Well,
the exact history behind the
my understanding, not that it's history, is just that even even a dead cat will bounce off the wall a little bit if you throw it at it.
I'm sure, yeah, it would. It might be dead, but it will still bounce.
Yeah, and then shortly thereafter, it'll drop again to the floor.
Yeah,
so don't
definitely.
be fooled. Don't be fooled by the short section of time during which there's a bounce. Doesn't mean there's any life left in it. Anyway, it's horrific. It's a horrific image, as we've just elucidated. So we'll have to think of something else. On Copytraders Club, we already replaced "there's many ways to skin a cat" with "there's many ways to eat an orange." So we should do the same for dead cat bounce. Leave your comments below when you like that smash button.
I'm sure there are lots, but most of the things that you can think of revolve around people dying, coming back to life, and then dying again.
Right. Well, let's give it some further thought.
Yeah.
Anyway, so how are you doing? It's very near the end of the football season. You must be thrilled with Brentford's first season in the Premier League.
Yes, I'm very happy with how Brentford have done this season, and I'm very proud, to be honest, because not a lot of people expected it from a small little team like Brentford, who were in League Two just 12 years ago. So to be in the Premier League, but not to be completely, doing really well in the Premier League and really holding our own is amazing achievement. I mean, we have a chance. We've got one more game against Leeds left, and we have a chance of finishing in the top half, which would be an absolutely extraordinary effort from everybody. And it just shows that the small clubs can do it right if they have the right strategy.
Yeah, now not to rain in your parade or anything, but it's a well-trodden path to do very well in your first season. And then next year, you get a bit found out. Teams know how to play you. You're not a surprise package anymore. So that'll be the real test. Stay up for 2 seasons and you're likely to become established.
Yeah, I think it can happen. I think there is that second season syndrome that happens because you've obviously a lot of momentum coming out of the championship. You're used to winning games. You put in a lot of effort because it's a new league and you want to impress. And then sometimes the effort levels can go down a little bit in the second season. However, I don't think it, like famous last words, right, Gavin, but I don't think it will happen to us. I think there's been a lot of comparisons that people say, oh, we could be similar to what happened to Sheffield United or other clubs that have gone down in the second season. But I personally think because we have such a good strategy in place and because our recruitment is so good and we have really good players in our squad, and I think we're going to continue to add to them. I think we're going to be a bit more like, I think our style is a lot more similar to Brighton, who have managed to stay up quite a few seasons in the Premier League because they might not have the most money in the world, but they sure know how to recruit players.
Now, speaking of football teams where there's not a lot of money involved, tell us about your experience when the bus full of Korean footballers pulled up.
Oh, that's a really funny story, actually. Yeah,
well,
this is a really...
Let the viewer be the judge of that.
Okay, well, it's an amusing story for me, but a less amusing story for my poor wife, who is a Korean national, a South Korean national, I will say. So, just to let the viewers know, I've lived in a lot of countries around the world, but at the time of this specific story, I was living in Qatar in the Middle East. And in Qatar, they held the Asian football championship, which is similar to the Euro championships that you have in Europe. And all the teams from around Asia and the Middle East, they all come together and play in this big football tournament. And it was in Qatar. And I went out with my wife to a nice kind of hotel to take her for dinner one night. And because Qatar is a fairly small place, there's only a certain number of, really good hotels. So the majority, there was different football teams at all of the different kind of 5-star hotels. So we kind of pulled up and we were just looking for a parking space. And then we saw this big kind of quite luxurious bus pulling up. And they pulled up just right outside the door. And we were kind of just driving just to the side of them. And then when they pulled up, they started to get off the bus. And I could see straight away that these were quite athletic guys. And they were wearing the tracksuits, national team tracksuits. So, and I obviously could see that they were Asian, most likely North Asian. When they came off the bus. And then I saw a sign that said Korea, but I couldn't see the first part of the sign. So I could just see the part which said Korea. So as they were coming off the bus, I said, to my wife, it's the South Korean national football team. Amazing. So I wound down the window and I started to, in a very, speaking in Korean, but in a kind of very British sport type of way. I said, 대한민국, which means, the great South Korea. And I kept repeating that. And then I said a few other songs, which was like Pisong Korea, which is like another expression to cheer on the South Korean national team. And then as one of the players began to continue to walk forward, I could see the other half of his tracksuit, and it said DPRK Korea, which we all know is North Korea. And they gave me some really, really extremely dirty looks. And I just wanted the floor to open up because it was extremely embarrassing. And then my wife was absolutely horrified because she's South Korean, and not many South Koreans have even seen North Koreans in the flesh. So it was quite an embarrassing story, but quite funny at the same time.
Yeah, I wonder what they thought. Some Caucasian dude singing Korean football chants at them in the first place,
and in their enemy chant.
Yeah, well. Sure. Very good. So you're well known as being a Singapore-based PI. You've done quite a lot to gather a group of fellow Singaporean-based PIs around you in your PI investor calls, updates, but you're not in Korea. But edit that. But you're not in Singapore right now. You're in Korea.
I am. Yes, I'm spending some time in South Korea because obviously that's where my wife is from, and she's got a couple of issues at the moment with some family members. Some health issues. So I'm here for a period of time. I'm not quite sure how long I'm here for yet, but yes, I'm enjoying life in South Korea at the moment.
And is there anything in the news about COVID in North Korea? I saw there's some suggestion that it's running rampant and that nobody will admit it.
Yeah, I'm sure that it's running rampant in North Korea, but those people are not allowed out of their own country in North Korea, so it's going to stay very confined to what happens in North Korea. So yeah, there is a lot of I think there is a lot of COVID in North Korea, as there is in China at the moment as well.
Can't imagine North Korea has tremendous health service or particularly robust population.
No, I'm sure that they have quite a poor health service. So they're probably struggling quite a lot with it at the moment. I'm not sure whether they've got any vaccinations and things like that. But things are tending to things have improved a lot in South Korea. So they've dropped the mask requirement about 2 weeks ago. But it's really quite interesting for me actually, because in the Western world, people either never wore masks in the first place or wore masks but really hated it so much that they didn't really comply with it. But I find it quite funny here in South Korea because they've had the mask requirement just like Singapore actually, the whole way through COVID-19, and they've just lifted it about 2 weeks ago. However, the first day you'd expect after they lifted it for everybody to be walking around without their masks on, because I called it Face Liberation Day. Mm-hmm. But no, they weren't. Like everybody is still wearing their masks on the street. It's not compulsory anymore, but it's just that feeling. It's just that kind of culture of doing what's best for everybody else and having some personal sacrifice on your kind of liberty in order to help out the greater good.
Wouldn't there have been a number of people wearing masks pre-COVID anyway in South Korea?
They would. They usually do it in Asia as a whole, especially North Asia. I experienced it also when I was living in China. Yeah. If somebody is sick, like they have the flu or they're not very well and they have to go to work for whatever reason, then they generally wear masks and they try not to come in actually at all if people are sick. So there's a lot stronger kind of regard for the health of others in Asia than there probably is in other countries.
Okay, now let me say something that you might find a little bit upsetting.
Okay.
You strike me as a man. Well, you strike me as a man, Stephen, who, much like myself, likes his food. and I want to talk to you about Korean food because my experience of Korean food is limited, and I don't think is Korean food any good.
I like Korean food. Yes, a lot. There's lots of different Korean food that you can have, but they're very famous for the kind of Korean barbecues, and which you have, for example, you have lamb, and you have like really soft and really nice kind of lamb, and then you have lots and lots of different sauces. It's really good Korean food, but it can be quite spicy as well. I'm not massively into spicy food. Like I have a probably slightly higher tolerance than most Western men, but I'm not really into really spicy food. But you can. The food's delicious. It's really nice.
Well, the only Korean food I eat on any sort of regular basis is kimchi, which is one of the things that turn most people away.
Yes,
which is like cold, spicy cabbage, basically.
Yeah, it's cold cabbage with spicy kind of paste on it, which is kind of fermented for a long period of time. And they actually call it it's actually been classified as a superfood. Yeah. So it's supposed to be extremely good for your health.
It's good for your gut bacteria.
I think so. So yeah, I eat some kimchi, but there's always kimchi. There's always been kimchi in my fridge, regardless if I'm in South Korea or not with the South Korean wife. They have it with breakfast, have it with lunch, and they have it with dinner.
Very good. I was going to make some sort of joke about kimchi. Sounds like a Korean woman, but
kimchi.